What up? We got Logan McDermott. Okay, I gotta get clothes out of this. What's up, Logan? How's it going, man? We're live.
I'm just streaming and dreaming, man.
Streaming and
Dreaming and
dreaming.
streaming.
Streaming in HD and dreaming in just standard definition.
Dreaming and just standard stuff. I like to keep my life pretty standard. Let's be real.
I dream in standard definition for sure. Actually, I dream in black and white most of the time. I'm totally.
That's pretty cool.
I'm serious,
if you
dude.
dream in black and white, that's
I'm
pretty
serious.
imaginative.
Only once, every once in a while, I'll have like, oh, this dream is red. Like there'll be a lot of
Yeah.
or this dream is a lot of reds and yellows every once in a while, but most of my dreams are completely grayscale.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, man. There is one specific dream I've had that has blown my mind, and it was back in like 2010. I was on surrounded by oceans, and I was on this like black and white marbled platform, like stone platform with geometric shapes everywhere. And there was like a reflecting pool in the middle with like flakes of gold in it. And it wasn't until I like got in close to the reflective pool to see that the green was the gold flakes were like organisms, right? Like that was it. It was like the most tranquil place
It was like
in
all
my
alive.
imagination.
It was all alive. You're saying?
Yeah, and I was I started asking like how did I get here, you know? But then I stopped caring how I got there, and I started thinking like I'm here. This is the most
Wow.
peaceful place in my imagination. And then I actively knew I was dreaming, right? Like those lucid dreams. So it was pretty
Hell
great.
yeah.
So I got to hang out in my own dream,
That's a breakthrough.
my own dream lobby.
Yeah, just a little. That's the happy place, right?
Yeah,
The happy
my own little
place.
place.
So how's it been, man? That's the landlord doing the lawn.
Oh yeah. Hopefully they should be done soon. I was offended.
Dude,
I was like getting set up to start the stream, and then and then I just so happened to see their truck pull up, and I thought, great timing, guys.
it's a sign of summer, which is welcomed.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
so I can-
And I've actually been raking up a lot of the greens, like the grass cuttings, because there's some parts of our vacant lot here that get really long, and has actively been used for straw in my garden, which is great.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how
stuff.
much you been getting out in the garden in the dirt? Because I know
Oh,
last when you were here in Milwaukee, I don't know. Why don't you tell everybody here who's listening a little bit
Yeah.
about yourself?
okay. So, like super rewind back to my childhood. I grew up spending time in my grandpa's garden. You know, spending time with my grandpa, and I can remember like as a kid eating raspberries and like knowing there was a spider in one, but still eating it. You know, and having those experiences with nature. And then when I moved to Milwaukee to pursue my undergrad, I had to do my service learner activities through like my science classes. Like I had to do like volunteering. And so I volunteered with the Victory Garden Initiative, and that's kind of it was like 1.75 acre plot right on Concordia and Holton. If you guys know the Walmart on Capitol, it's like just south of that. And I got to interact with a lot of kids there that would stop by, and I felt really good knowing that they're going to have similar memories of their childhood and eating raspberries and having nature's candy. So I stuck with it, and I've actually gotten to work with quite a few urban ag nonprofits, as even if it's just volunteering, all the way to like farm managing to even just this old Belgian guy. Big shout out to Henry. He actually gave me a lot of the resources to go to different churches and schools and build garden beds. Like the Riverside High School, they've got about 12 garden beds in their back. That was all funded by Henry. And
Oh shit! Is that the one right on the Oak Leaf Trail you're talking about?
yes, yeah,
Oh, shit.
right behind Riverside High School. Like right when you're there. I was
I
watching
thought
a
that
lot
was
of
part of the Urban Ecology Center.
That's wait, no, not on the Oak Leaf. I know where you're saying now on the Oak Leaf Trail. That's different.
What am I?
If you know,
no,
like,
in Riverside High School. Is that the one right
yeah,
on
so
Locust, right?
where you vote, yeah, on Locust.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I guess if you were like in their science classroom and just like peeked out the window, you'd see all the garden beds
Dope.
there. Yeah, those are the ones. Those are fun, and they had a culinary class, like a home ec class, I believe. that used a lot of the produce. So I was really happy to hear about that, because
Oh, that's great.
that's like the second half to gardening is what the heck are you gonna do with all of it? You know, you can grow unlimited tomatoes, but who the heck how you gonna what are you gonna do with all these tomatoes, man?
Yeah, you gotta distribute it.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
you've been in the gardening game and in the farming and urban
Hmm.
farming, and that was really intrigued me. I remember when you were in Milwaukee, I like will tell people this all the time about how I'll just pay. I would just give you $20 and you give me a bag of groceries of
Yeah,
like
that was really fun too.
real shit that you made yourself, and I would be like,
Yep.
oh, this is Logan took care
This
of
is my
this.
love.
Yeah, this is
That was my cultivation.
yeah, man. And I remember at the time I had tons of venison. I ate only that I
Hmm.
shot of a deer that I shot myself, and it's like,
Hmm.
so I was eating that deer and eating your veggies for all my
Hmm.
meals, and it was like in the middle of the summer. It was probably the most alive I've felt.
Yeah.
It was crazy. It really made a huge difference in my
Hmm.
life, just knowing exactly where my food came from, knowing exactly and having a part of it in like a part in it, like
And knowing
from
that it was organic practices, like
right.
knowing that there were no weed killers, it was all my hands and everybody that helped me. I had plenty of people come out and help me in my
Yeah.
hoop house there. So
Yeah, that was great. I really am looking for that now. I feel like a lot of people would
mhm.
sign up for that thing in an instant. Like we have all these advanced delivery systems for Amazon and shit, but like the farmers don't have access to those types of technologies, do they? Like, are there like delivery farm to delivery stuff? You know?
Not that I don't know anybody personally. A lot of the people that I know that have CSAs, or community supported
Right,
agriculture
CSA.
programs, they will simultaneously have a specific farmers market that they have a stand at, and that's usually
The
their hub.
farmer, yeah.
So you'll have their table there, and you'll come pick up your bag there. Uh, I'm really glad we were neighbors too during that, because I remember my vehicle was malfunctioning during that summer, and I did a whole lot of deliveries by bicycle, and that made it all the more rewarding for myself to be far from gasoline, too. I did want to mention too, like when you're talking about cooking all your own, like with your own veggies and having your own venison. I remember when you let us use your hunting cabin for our ultimate frisbee
Oh
tournament,
yeah, yeah.
and I brought a stock pot, right, full of tomatoes and peppers and all that and onion, and I had made this wonderful vegetable stew, and I dumped a bunch of rice grains in it, and it was like the hottest, spiciest, most full of vitamin thing ever, and it was a banquet for the whole team to enjoy. And that was kind of one of that's a memory that will always last with me, as far as like getting to
Just
sup
yeah.
on my own fruits of labor.
Feeding an
Feeding
army.
feeding an army, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
getting to feed a literal army. Yeah, militia, some say.
That's one of the four druids of the Dagda, I think is what they are,
Hmm.
of the OG peoples in Ireland. Actually, this uh, this spectacular is those four druids. This isn't just. I mean, it's a cool design, of course. Shouts out to
Hmm.
Big Shot Robot, but these are actual druids and the one on the top left, or at least the one here. He's got a pot.
Hmm.
He's got a magic pot or a cauldron. It's upside down, so it's tough to see.
Okay.
But if you see, and it's a magic, uh, essentially a talisman of his. It's a magic talisman that feeds an army forever. It's like a bottomless cauldron.
Okay.
So I think
No, dude.
there's some deep virtue to that. Like there's some real
Yeah.
deep like it's one of the most important things. It's like the sustenance to survive a species, this humanity to just survive. You need that reliable cauldron of
Yeah, you
food.
need reliable food source.
Yeah.
100%. One fun thing in Viking folklore and like Norse mythology. So Thor always had this lamb, I believe, this goat, and two rams, I believe. They would pull his like chariot or whatever. but you could eat them. You could kill them, butcher them, turn them over a spit and eat them. And as long as you didn't destroy the bones to drink the marrow, and you just kept the bones and piled the bones together when you were done, the ram would be back in the morning. The bones would
Wow.
reassemble in the meat. So Thor kind of had this, he had this infinite amount of meat source with him,
What does that
which
mean?
maybe
Does that mean like
means
don't waste, or like be intentional, or like don't kill the whole thing? You can't decimate a population, or why did he keep
honestly,
the bones?
no, I think it means that the dude ate a lot of meat. And I think that he just always like that. And what like Thor's a symbol of like strength and agriculture. Right. Like a lot of people don't know, like Thor is not the god of war. That's a common misconception. He's the farmer. He's the god of the farmer, not of like agriculture, but of the men and women who are farming, right? And then who also go to war. So kind of like the soldier inside. But he had a lot of meat. He ate a lot of ram, dude. And that probably just goes like, keep your animals close, take care of them, and make sure you always have one in the morning, I guess, like to take care of, keep them around. You have to be pretty wealthy to have all that animal.
What's the difference between Valhalla and Asgard?
Oh, yeah. So Asgard is like Washington, D.C. Asgard is like where all the gods hang out. It's where they do their business, their politics. And I think we all know about how like fickle the Norse gods are. They're constantly changing their mind. They're non-benevolent, unlike the Christ god, which is like you can almost foresee what he's going to do, and he's very calming and talks about forgiveness, whereas like Norse gods are super non-benevolent. Lawnmower. And then Valhalla is actually it's a heaven that you go to where you wake up and you get to go to war. You just fight each other. You fight everybody. You just beat the snot and club and bash bones. And then after the battle's done, everybody gets mended and healed. They get their HP points back up to maximum. And then they walk into the big hall. They have unlimited amounts of food and beer, mead, and then they go to bed and do it again. That's Valhalla is just kind of like a happy place. Yeah. But I actually heard that it's not like the idea of like Valhalla and like dying as a warrior was a lot more sacred in the sense that it wasn't very popular. It wasn't like if you take the entire like Norse population, it was probably like a 10%. I mean, I'm guessing on that, but it was a very small amount of people who actually strove to get to Valhalla.
Sure.
The rest of them were like, we'll just live on here and die and go to hell.
Yeah, I would imagine there are similarities in the like afterlife concepts, but everyone has to know that all these mythologies have such rich diversity in these these concepts, and a lot of our interpretations of myths and people's actual beliefs are our own projections of like the current and contemporary. So like you mentioned the Christ, like the first thing in my life, a lot of like all these stories that I was told as a kid, those myths, I'm seeing through those myths already. And you have to really be immersed in something and take a new myth in, like those deep seated myths that are built into our DNA. And that's why I think it's interesting though. I wonder about this sincerely. Like, you're a McDermott, I'm a McCullah. Like I have more Norwegian blood than Irish blood. Like that's according to the DNA test that my parents have done and my brother.
Oh, cool.
It's always changing, but so there's a lot of Irish, but it's just because we have the Norwegian DNA. I mean, a lot of people have Norwegian DNA because, like, the Normans, from my understanding, the Normans were the first people to when everyone knows Normandy, right? And which is in France, but Normans just meant the northern people, and they came down. Yeah. It's the original Vikings, and then the Vikings came through. So Ireland was conquered by the Vikings.
Dude, King Franklin, King Harold, I can't remember who it was when the Normans like there was a huge fight between the like French Normans and then the king at the time. And it was cool because there was a comet that was flying in the air,
Oh
like
yeah.
during this whole battle at the end. And it's funny because, and it's something I wanted to bring up today as a discussion point, is the human consciousness today comparing to like the human consciousness of our ancestors that would hunter gather, and look at the stars, and how we've today considered them to be inferior to us because they used like magic and mysticism to understand it. But when you look at like DNA, genetics, and evolution, we can't be that far off from who our ancestors were genetically.
Right.
Like to gain all these mutations takes so long. We have more, food in our diet to prevent us from having, being deprived of food and getting delirious and stuff. But I mean, ultimately, I think our consciousnesses were the same. And the battles on the Norman side used the comet as a sign because stars would represent the dead sometimes, right? We today
Yeah.
say like, "Oh, there's a star shining down on me."
That's
Um,
an ancient Hebrew mysticism and stuff too. Like
yeah,
it's
and a comet was seen as the death of a king because a comet can linger around for even up to 52 days. Like a comet can linger for weeks in the
hmm.
night sky, and they always see that as the death of a king leaving and like burning up because it's such a big presence. And during that comet, which I think might have been Halley's comet, whatever it is, yeah, they murked the king, man. They took him out, and it was like it ultimately
Wow.
changed the course of the English language and history. It was one of those like really big movements where cold steel makes a change,
Sure.
and it completely like reshape, formed a new shape for the trajectory for the future.
I mean, I'm glad you brought that up because that was where I was heading with my point about the old myths and trying to understand these old myths from and know that yes, they believed in these things and their beliefs and the idea structure can change, but ultimately we are the same consciousness. Like in because I don't know from what I understand of the concept of the Jungian collective unconscious is that that's essentially where all of our primal dreams and stories and these concepts are of like the
Mm-hmm.
earliest parts of our consciousness developing. Like as humans we're evolving to even abstract thought, and language was just forming. Like when language, like they had to, it set huge precedents for like just we have these stories that we're told when we're kids, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge trajectory right there. But there's also this larger super organism trajectory of humanity that has the those initial things that humans together came out when language was just forming, right? These really old myths kind of like just barely probably scratch the surface of what the stories were before then, and so we have so much information, like you're saying, and so much food and so much information. And a lot of people are very, I totally agree, man. Like a lot of people are very much like, because we have our own technology magic, that means
Yeah,
that makes,
we use the magic to the best of our ability.
yeah,
No different than what our ancestors had. And in far into the future, there is going to be someone who looks back at us and they're going to laugh about like 5Gs. The 5G
right,
thing
right.
that's going on. It's 5G technology. They're going to look at it at the way we probably look at people talk about black magic. And they're going to be like, oh my God, they were so mystified by 5G. Like apparently they couldn't even see the gamma rays of it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's going to be so different in the future, and we have to take into I always take into facts when it comes to understanding what we're perceiving, right? So obviously we all have perceptions. We all think we're seeing the same color when we see the color blue. We all agree that that's blue, but are we seeing different colors? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then how we've used religion and we've used politics and sociology to to sculpt our communities and to sculpt who we are. Never forget that a good magician knows his magic doesn't work. So that was something I took from my undergrad. Um, in that the witch doctor who's performing these things, or the priest who's leading an exorcism, right? I think a good magician, one that people say, wow, they're very good at their spiritual calling. I think a good magician knows their magic does not work. And therefore they're able to manipulate it in the way that people who don't have it, who don't have their religion in their forebrain, or they're looking for something to determine what's in the back of their mind. They're looking for something to almost project, right, what they're experiencing, and they don't know what to label it as. And then we're given something to label it.
So what do you mean when he says that the magician knows that his
Knows
magic doesn't work?
Yeah.
You mean like it's an illusion? Maybe it's an illusion. It's so you're saying that it's all a magician is really just or someone who exerts magic is someone who can shape the consciousness of others by like changing their perspectives, by like coercing them in a way, or manipulating their tendencies, or
I think it's a person who, because don't get me wrong, it takes a lot of studying, right, to become a priest, to become a witch doctor, a druid, a magician. You got to do a lot of practicing, and you have to learn a lot from others before you. And I think it goes into what we were talking about with religion and these stories giving us projections of the real world, and saying that like, oh, there's a lunar eclipse right now. That's actually a water dragon eating the sun. You know, but it's giving us ways to determine what's going on in our life. And it's being handed to us.
Yeah.
And the person that's delivering it, who's delivering this opiate to the masses, so to speak, they can't believe in it. You can't be a magician and plan to saw somebody in half and put them back together. Because first off, that's fake. You can't saw human without necromancy. And I don't necessarily believe in, necromancy. You can't saw somebody in half and then put them back together, right? So obviously the magician knows this is not real. And that's why he's able to use illusions, to use his tricks, to use his words and constructs and mirrors to make it appear that way. But what does it do for us? It entertains us. It gives us something to think about. We don't think about that it's not real. We just let it happen. We take it from the back of our minds.
So you're talking about this illusion magic, but when I think about magic with like a K, right? People say, oh, magic, there's magic and then there's magic with a K, and magic with a K is just really, the mythology and the study of things that like people say, oh, I don't believe in magic. It's like, well, or even magic with a K, or it's like some occult or some like weird, like just in the storybooks. It's like, well, humans discuss ideas in different ways, and like most of human existence, there wasn't written language. Like we're talking about these concepts of like having these languages in our head and like relying on a collective unconscious, and magic and these changing of perspectives, like even just knowing where the right mushroom is, or like being able to like tell when a bird, like I was just looking that up, of orag, I forget what it was, but
auspices.
Is that
an auspice is someone who can read omens from birds.
Yeah, auspice.
Auspice. Yeah,
the
Roman
osprey or augury, osprey.
Not too sure.
But yeah, dude, so just like knowing that, like that's like magic with a K, or like
totally.
Or like knowing, even just knowing chemistry now. Like right now, I have like screens. I'm between a screen and you're like, like I see you right here, and I'm able to talk in perfect clarity, and all these people online are able to be able to like join this conversation. Like this is magic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Like in that way,
telepathy.
In that way, it's just like, maybe it's like you were saying, maybe this is just rudimentary. Like maybe one of the interesting theories that I've heard about technology and the cycles of human consciousness, like you said, I think the more that we're just like, I mean, you studied history, so, and you can look into ancient history and you can see obvious signs of highly advanced like mathematics. Like we're not talking about just like, oh yeah, like they knew how to do the Pythagorean theorem. It's like they had the cosmos mapped out to an insanely accurate degree, like, and we're able to build monolithic structures with we don't even know how they even built them. Like there's so much unknown. That's why the ancient alien thing is so popular, because it's like there are so many unanswered mysteries. So it's just, it's very entertaining to, like, I don't know. I saw the first Ancient Aliens pilot one, and it was really entertaining. I was in Madison with some buddies, and when it was released on the History Channel, like it must have been like right when it first came out. It was just a one-off documentary, like, quote unquote, and it and we were just smoking weed in the dorm room, and this shit came on and blew my mind.
Yeah.
Freshman
Dude,
year.
That's one of the things too, and like the mind-blowing factor is I love it when it's debunked by something fairly profane. So one thing that I like to talk about is the Mayan calendar that depicted the end of the world back in 2012 or 13 or whatever it might be.
It didn't predict the end of the world.
It was just the end of their calendar, right?
Yeah, it was just the end of a cycle.
Everybody was like, this is the end of the world, right? The people that were saying like this is depicting something huge, I just took it from a profane standard. It was like they just ran out of room, dude.
Yeah, it's like when I always imagined a calendar. When you have those calendars on the wall and you just flip them, and it's like, imagine if you had a calendar and you hit December and you go to flip it and you go, end of the world.
Do you know what I love comparing it to though? Like it's something that I thought of. In the same aspect, but maybe on a more grandiose scale, the Y2K bug.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
so the Y2K bug, the computers, they never programmed the year. It was like 1980s or whenever we invented the computer, 60s, 70s. You're the guy to know that, right?
There was a real technical issue that came with that.
Yeah. Because they coded the dates in twos, like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. They didn't put four digits for the year.
It was
so
just
when
like,
it got to 1999, they're like, shit, what's going to happen?
The data structure, it was in a very small amount. It only had this much data, and it was only set to like increment. So it was going to start over.
All of our finances are going to go back to 1900s, right? 1900. And then all of our bank records are going to be busted.
See, everyone had their own system and everyone did it differently, right. and they were like slowly transitioning. It was definitely super overhyped. Like it was
very overhyped.
It became a commercial. It was like almost a cult. Like there is and I think a lot of this stems from a lot of the apocalyptic worshipers. I mean, that's a huge part of at least United States Christian mythology. Is the apocalypse, especially in the Anabaptist like traditions and stuff of like the judgments and like the reborn, like you have to be reborn now, so when the apocalypse comes, it's just like a doubling down on baptism essentially, like just like you need 2 layers, you got to get deeper.
Yep. You're gonna need this.
You're gonna need. Yeah, I think they almost like want and that's a really interesting mindset of just like
there was a group of
like
people.
It's puritanic, right? It's like it's like I'm saved, I'm the pure one, and everyone else is screwed, and so let's just get this over with. Yeah. Like you would want it to be over, right? You'd rather go to heaven, right? If you
obviously,
but you're talking about Valhalla. About how, and that's what I brought up, like thinking I always think about myths in terms of like the myths that I already know, but when you get deeper into them and you start to understand the cultural context of what these myths are, and we only know so much, and that's why Norse mythology is probably it's actually one of the more well-known like ones. There's lots of good source materials and stuff. I mean, that are definitely an incredible mythology. Celtic mythology, on the other hand, is very fragmented, and it's very like even just Irish and British mythology, like that whole thing has struggled with a clear identity. Like actually, there is no one. Actually, I don't even know if there is one. There is no creation myth that we know of. We have no creation myth for like the I know there would be like, okay, there's a God and God came, and it was like, okay, well, what's the creation? Like all yeah, it's really interesting. I think it's because of all the different cultures that have come through. Like there's no, like that's creation is one of those things that that is so binding to the culture. Like people, the creation myths are so important. Yeah. And I think that if you want to know really about a culture, look at and see how they feel like they got created. How they started.
Yeah. Another good way is to look at their heroes. You look at their heroes and villains, that's a great way to see what the culture respected or what they didn't. But as far as the Celtic like history goes and that, I know they were always an oral based tradition. Yeah. You know, tradition from the the true definition of the word tradition means physically passed down. And that was typically a backpack. If you were a nomadic people and you believed in traditions and oral traditions, it was a physical passing down of like words and backpacks. And, you know, grandpa dies. Now you get his like agricultural tools. And now you're the one who's got to go keep all the sheep close to the human flock. But it wasn't until 600 Common Era that people in like Ireland and the Celtic area were starting to write down some of their tales. And that was because of monks, you know, Roman Catholic monks and that who are going out as these like missionaries, getting, you know, to know the native people, writing down stories. And one of the coolest things about oral tradition is that you can always add to it, but you can never take away. Like if you learn 10 things, like 10 commandments in your oral tradition, you can't take away from the 10, but you can always add stuff to it. And
what do you mean? Can't someone just take it away? Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the cool things about the Celtic oral translation that the monks had discovered back in 600 CE is that there was a huge debate on when they were writing down laws of the Celts, laws. And, you know, mind you, the Celts were nomadic people. Who knows how far they've touched the world on foot. And they have this law about if an elephant breaks if your neighbor's elephant comes into your yard and breaks like your fencing or breaks your property, who has to pay for it? The man who owns the elephant or the property owner who breaks it? It's his property, right? But then you have to think of the question, why the hell was there an elephant in Ireland?
Right.
Why the hell was there an elephant up in northern Europe? And there wasn't. It was just the nomadic people who had lived a long time ago, way down, you know, toward the Middle East area, northern Africa, had experienced elephants, had lived for maybe hundreds of years with elephants, using the same oral traditions, and then, you know, finally settling up there and bringing it with them.
That's crazy.
So it just goes to show how important, and a lot of people think oral tradition's a sham, right? Because anybody can just change it, but clearly it is a sacred text, and it's only sacred because the magicians know not to tamper with it, and
right, that's an incredible responsibility. And then I think that's why the druidics or like the Druids of the Celts, which is essentially just the priestly people or like the spiritual class of the Celts is later. Yeah, we don't even know what they did or how because like you said, they're all oral, and all we know from my understanding is like all we know is what other people wrote about them later and like referenced them and stuff, or like we can look at some artifacts and guess what gods were, how they were portrayed. And so we just have secondhand accounts of other people who experienced them. So we really have no idea. So I think that's why it's such a rich thing to look at now, because I feel like we all as a people are pretty spiritually fragmented. And like, and so like I look at a thing like that and it's like, oh, here's the thing that just wants to be like completed. Like maybe you said like, yeah, you can, I don't know, things were, but you can't remove things. But when your people are,
you have an incomplete tradition.
Right. So then how are I think what a lot of people don't understand about the oral tradition is it's the major downside of like, okay, well, what happens if
the keeper dies?
What happens if the bards, like, you know, get a venereal disease with all the nymphs they've been with, and then
he gets gonorrhea and it screws up his brain. He starts telling weird stories about magic. I don't think I've ever heard a religious story that involved magic. And you know what? To credit it to gonorrhea probably makes the most sense. Unchecked gonorrhea is the bane of all oral
I
translation.
think gonorrhea, maybe. I don't know about gonorrhea, but yeah, some sort of. No, what is the thing that killed Scott Joplin?
Ooh, I don't know.
It's one of the
Let's
really
turn to
bad
our
ones.
audience members. Do you know what killed Scott Joplin?
Yeah, anyone in the chat, can you guys look up what venereal disease, or also known as sexually transmitted disease,
Turn your safe search off.
No, yeah, it's a pretty common one. I can't remember it.
Okay.
But I guess the point of what I'm asking is like, so what's the advantage of the oral tradition when motherfuckers just die? Like, and it's gone.
Darwinism, man. I'm honestly just going to go ahead and call out Darwinism, and that the religion that can have the most acolytes and transmit the most knowledge, they're going to be the religion that succeeds. They're going to be the one that makes it to the next one. Syphilis. Thanks, Oates.
Pretty beggar on Twitch.
To Cody.
Oh yeah, so on my chat, I see the chat. We have a different chat because you're probably looking at the host one, so I can't see those. But or yeah, I can on my phone, but
fun.
We got lots of different chats.
You got it too.
We got to cross pollinate the chats, and then but we got to be careful, otherwise someone gets syphilis.
Cross pollination is very tough, man. Cross pollination is a very difficult thing to do, but if you achieve it, it increases your chance of biological and genetic success.
So when will humans have to start cross-pollinating with?
Hopefully we already are, man.
Yeah.
Cross-pollinating with what? Plants?
Mushrooms?
Dude, I've been thinking about this for a couple of years now. I don't think I've written it down yet, and I've never talked about it, but it's always been in my head. Like, how much humans take from the animal kingdom. If you look at armor and think of like armadillo or turtles, if you think of like people who rock climb and think of spiders, I think I had better examples at one point, or like maybe like a oceanic tribe that's on an island, and a lot of their, I remember at the Milwaukee History Museum, you can go free on the first Thursday of every month. I always used to go and do that, and they had this like Pacific Islander like warrior costume, and it was covered with like sea urchins and had like stingers from different animals as a part of its like weaponry, and it was literally just taking different lethal aspects of its surrounding and applying it to itself. And I've just always loved that aspect. Or if you think of like the Navy SEALs that have their like night vision goggles that make them look like spiders, and they can like see all great, like night vision itself, stolen, man. Like that had to like.
Did even Velcro?
Humans are probably the laziest animal, but the most successful, because we learn that if we eat cooked meat, our brains can develop faster.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we're the laziest, but I feel like we have we have bigger brains that can process more information, so we have. I think that's what that's what a lot of people think about with consciousness. A lot of people, like when you say consciousness is one of those big loaded words and stuff, and especially when you say collective unconscious and consciousness, or the subconscious and consciousness, or your conscience, and all these fucking words that all have different meanings, and I don't know. I believe that consciousness is in like energy. Like I think of it as in the physical sense of energy, like and like if it has energy and it can vibrate something, then it's got consciousness. But I feel like, and I think that supersedes the intellect. Like I think that humans are, in our brain and our capacity is intelligence. You know what I mean? And we can process information, and we can have awareness, and we're aware. And so in a sense, like the consciousness, we are conscious of ourselves. Like, so like that there's like different meanings and different words, but the words are kind of applied to two different layers. You know what I mean?
And then what is ourself, and how are we self-conscious about it, and all that stuff?
Right. And that's where that's where it starts to get, you have to start really surrendering all of all the things that you think, because everything everything breaks down. All logic to see logos like can only go so far, and it just you run out, once you can't apply that anymore, then that's when I start looking at the myths and the older, like the deeper rich symbols and primary language, like abstractions of thought language before we could even count shit, you know what I mean? Like just we could start fucking grunting. Like
the colors weren't even around for the longest time. Like even in like the Odyssey, they don't call the ocean any specific color. They call it like a wine dark. They use like comparative speech of other things that have colors similar. But I know like the color blue is a pretty new term in the face of human existence. Like the color blue and understanding it's always been a shade of green, you know, and that's
where did blue come from then?
Exactly, man. It's because we're constantly creating labels.
Is it because of optics?
Eventually people realize that blue was significantly different from green enough that it got its own name. You know, as far as like the conscious of analyzing itself, was it Alan Watts?
Yeah. Becoming aware of awareness.
Yeah, or saying like you'll never be able to touch the tip of your finger with the tip of your finger, or lick the tip of your tongue with the tip of your tongue, or see, like you can look into a mirror, but you'll never be able to like see into your like sight. And that's like the same way. Like then how can a conscious man think that he can consciously perceive himself?
Right.
You know, it's very difficult. That's where you have rituals like isolation. You have rituals like drug usage and intense prayer or meditation to help you detach yourself from your own consciousness and, in a way, look back as a satellite. Monks all the time in Tibetan history would just disappear for years, man. They would go hide in the mountains for years because they would be so detached from the society. When they would come back to society, they have a whole different look of what it is, right? Could you imagine if somebody from the 70s just like showed up today at your door? They'd have a million questions and probably a million more critiques of what we're doing wrong. Or maybe true input on what we're doing right. You know, so I think isolation and getting the chance to tear yourself away from the real world is incredibly important.
Walden's Pond, right?
Sure. Whose pond?
Walden's
Pond?
Yeah, Henry David Thoreau.
That
was his whole the naturalist existentialist, or transcendentalist rather. The transcendentalist is all like I think someone in the chat said something about how nature thought of it first, and that's right. Like you say, we take so much from the animal kingdom, but we are part of the animal kingdom.
We are the animal kingdom.
So like we are the aware. We are the, and that's what the transcendentalist thing is like. Mm-hmm. Humans are on this precipice of like we got our flesh and blood and bones and fucking shit like here on
shit and poop
and shit and
here
on Earth as animals, but we also have like developed this like conscious brain that can start to process things a little differently and start to like simulate realities and stuff, and like and it seems like dolphins can do some of it and like chimps can do some of it. Like they're saying that a lot of, I forget what species, but there is some that like they're saying monkeys, I don't know exactly what it is, but the headline is monkeys are entering the Stone Age. They're starting to use tools and stuff. So it's like, okay, as humans evolve, so probably we'll eat. Like we're not the only motherfuckers doing this shit. So, and I'm sure, and that's why Planet of the Apes is such an interesting story. But I
want to see Planet of the Dolphins. There's a bunch of dolphins fucking killing for fun, dude.
It's because it's because they're in a completely different. It's because they're in the sea, man. And
you think that when the ice caps melt and we're all underwater, that dolphins will become the new stewards of Earth?
They would probably be the only one that could. It would probably take
Yeah.
another million years or two or something. But
Yeah.
I don't know. They have the most, and of course whales and
Yeah.
orcas especially. They have incredibly advanced brains. They don't have like it's not the same as humans, so they can.
Mhm.
They're much more programmed to actually their social skills and stuff, because I think it's because they're underground, and so they have all these different needs and desires to be able to communicate in a completely different way. So these brains that are developed for this like underwater empathy,
Right.
like social system that's underwater, that they have to have this whole, it has to be programmed totally different, and their language is so complex and shit.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
man,
we domesticated grain. You know, if there was some way
Right.
that a dolphin could find a way to domesticate its food source, then it can get on repeat. I've always viewed, you know, evolution, like evolutionary mutations to how like we got to where we are, was just a specific species was put on repeat for a long time until that little mutation gave it the leg up, right? A giraffe reaches up with its head so many times into the tree for thousands and millions of years until eventually it gets a mutation to get that bigger neck, right? And I think that
So do you think the animal then like could be like, damn, I wish I had a better neck, or like they're probably thinking that, right? Like to a degree, like
to a degree, yeah,
as
they're
it
probably
gets
like,
as the snowball keeps going, and like the smarter species
it cycles on repeat. And the giraffes that have shorter necks that can't get to the tall apples, they die off.
and they
And
become
the
less
giraffes that are
sexy.
getting a little bit higher necks, they're able to reproduce.
And then the sexy ass
And-
giraffes are the ones with the long necks, you know, and be like,
yeah,
damn,
and
look
it
at
becomes
that
an item of
neck.
procreation.
Man, I wish I had that neck. I could get
Man,
all
you
the
see that giraffe with the long neck.
yeah.
That's
So
a long looking neck.
it's how that's, you know, like I said, I think people there is a, I think there's a direct one. There'd probably find me a person who believes that humans are superior to ancient civilizations now. They're the same people who believe humans are superior to other animals too. Like
Right.
like that. And you got to be careful with the word superior, because of course that's a qualification that, of course, it has different metrics for different people and stuff. But in terms of like morally, or like I'm better than them, like I'm better than them because I can think, as opposed to like we have the same value, but like I don't know. But I come from that transcendentalist, the concept of like all of the things together, like you transcend all those things, and humans are we're in the animal kingdom, but we also have this, and I think that's where spirit and magic and shit and language, all that shit comes from, that other world, the other kingdom rather, you know, like instead of the animal kingdom, it's some new well, I don't know about new, I shouldn't say new, but it's some, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know the people. We don't know what the higher intelligent people are. Like, I was talking to someone like, you can set up a decoy, a shitty decoy for like a deer or for any animal.
Duck,
it's just
like
like
mallard,
duck. You just put this shitty duck there, and then the duck's like, oh damn, look at that duck, and it goes down there.
Long neck. That's a long neck.
Damn, that giraffe's got a long neck. So like, and they go and they're totally fooled. So how many motherfuckers are out there, you know, that you walk down into the park, or you're downtown and you see some motherfucker, or all these people on TV or something. It's like some people are just crazy, like, you know, and you're just like, okay, this person doesn't even seem like a real person.
Yeah, dude.
Is that a decoy? Is that a decoy?
And I called humans lazy earlier, like the laziest in the animal kingdom. I meant to say, like, creatively speaking, the laziest, because all the technology that we have that makes us superior to the rest of the mammalian kingdom is because we've stolen from insects, and we've stolen from other mammals, and we've stolen from bats and owls and tigers.
I don't know if we stole it.
Rhinos. We took it. You're right. We didn't steal it, but like, we didn't create our own. I don't think we've created a lot of our own tools. I think we've witnessed other animals with their natural gifts that they're born with, and we've like
dude,
mimicked it.
our tool is like pattern decrypting. Like we can like
Mm-hmm.
we just have this brain that can just be like, I don't have to really move that much, but I can just like
Yeah.
concoct a simple way for me to do it. Like we don't even
Mm-hmm.
have like we're just these fleshy like sacks with a big
Meat
brain.
sacks,
Yeah,
water
and we're
sacks.
only gonna get sackier, man. And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think with the aliens, why aliens always look like they have larger heads and
Mm-hmm.
less skin and more
Tiny bodies, skinny
tiny
bodies.
and um sexually androgynous, right? Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
don't even know, like, and that might be the future, right? Like we don't even need
Yeah.
that.
We don't need procreation anymore, so people just
You
will
want to fuck
naturally
some
not be
shit?
horny anymore.
Go into the VR and you can do way more. It's even better than real life.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like if we eliminate the need to procreate, then I think evolutionarily we will no longer be horny. We won't need VR
Hmm.
stuff, or we won't need stuff like that. In fact, if you want to, achieve coitus, you're going to be seen as a barbarian. Like that's going to be a barbaric thing.
Yeah.
There's a science fantasy novel called The Forever War, and that's kind of like a concept in it's like the human race becoming all asexual. First, everybody becomes gay because of overpopulation. Everybody becomes gay, and then it goes even one step further down the book. But it's a fun read, so I'll leave. That's a suggestion I'll give to everybody. To get a copy of The Forever War. It's a really good
It's
book.
called The Forever War.
Yeah, it was written by a Vietnam veteran, and it's got, if you know
Do
the
you know
movie
the guy's
Starship
name?
Troopers, the movie Starship Troopers.
Do you know
You
the
seen
guy?
that?
Do you know the Forever War author's name?
Oh, not off the top of my head. My buddy's borrowing the book now. He's on
It's
a
okay.
deployment, and I
People
thought
can
it'd be
find
fun
it.
for him.
Yeah, I never saw Starship Troopers. I've heard good things about it though.
Okay. Oh yeah, Joe Haldeman,
Joe Haldeman.
Haldeman, 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 Joe Haldeman. Yeah, it's dope. It's kind of like a kinky book too, but it's got a lot of war in it because
Kinky War.
it's kinky war stuff. No, it's
Kinky
kind of like
war
Starship
stuff.
Troopers for anybody who's watching that's seen Starship Troopers. So you're fighting, and it's like a war against an alien race. But then it's also a lot like Interstellar, where time relativity plays a huge part in it.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of romance, dude. Like there's a couple scenes where like your heart just like goes out, and you're like, man, that's true romance. It's a catch-all, but it took me probably about 3 weeks of train rides to finish it. I ride a train to work, and it took me about 3 weeks to finish it. Just a couple train rides to and from work.
Hmm.
I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah.
And I did want to talk about too. We've covered a lot of the consciousness topics that I had in mind, but I wanted to ask you a question, something that we could maybe stew over. Does art inspire our lives, or is our life inspired by art? Wait, does art inspire life, or does life inspire art?
I would say it's life. I'd say life inspires art only just because life
Okay.
is if life is source like of everything. I mean,
Mhm.
it all depends on your definitions of the terms.
Which are both very large
know.
words to unpack.
So like the way that I perceive those terms and stuff is that life is essentially truth, is God. It's all of the universe is life. In a way. I mean, but that's one way to look at life. But then there's also the biological, ecological life. Like okay,
Right.
life is this stuff. So and art is a human thing. So
Right.
it's
I'm talking human life. Like
okay.
our, let's even zoom in on the Midwest and like unpack that.
At a
The
human
Midwest,
level.
yeah, the Midwest lifestyle. Like, is that inspiring our art found in our culture, or is the art in our culture inspiring how we're living? And I think it can go both ways.
Yeah.
In different walks of life. I think under capitalism, art inspires life.
Yeah.
And not the other way. I think very much that
I think you might be right with that.
I think art is definitely something that's created And you know, what even is art? Like, yeah, human life, universal life, God aspect. But then
What
we
is
talk about
art?
art, man. Like, what even is art
Dude, I'm an
today?
artist. I don't even know what an art is. No,
Yeah, right. I'm talking to one, and I'm like,
I,
help me understand. You know?
so the way that I look at it is you're right in the sense of a culture can't inspire any art if it's an uninspiring culture, but in
Right.
a way that inspires it because someone has to do it. So someone
Yep.
has to, you know, unless it's such a terrible culture and there's no art and that's like, you know, demonized and stuff. And it could happen, you know, like there are
Mhm.
places where I get worried about like this empire, like you're saying, capitalism is like art,
Yeah.
like empire, where these symbols and meanings and words and things get neutered. The true power of art can be like neutered and commodified and genericized, and it's
Mhm.
just, and it's perpetuated, and then people get in this lull and they think that this is, it's like fast food, right?
Oh yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
just like, so in a way, like that inspire, I mean, I would tend to say life inspires art before that, but before art inspiring life. But if you think about art is really just a way to connect people, like you were talking about magic and how an illusionist
Mhm.
is trying to change people's consciousness and alter their perception, just the way that you're talking about a monk goes into isolation or anything. Art is essentially bringing the people together to allow them to have those experiences, and whether it's just one person with, like, let's say a sculpture, someone walks by a sculpture by themselves, and they see it and they get moved by something, or like in the beauty, or see themselves in it, or whatever it is. That is a communication between the artist and the, whether the artist is alive or not. It's still a communication within the self, but also within the social thing. But it's more just internally. So I think there's a spectrum of like how socially directed art can be versus how internally directed is. And I think the great art is the stuff that can do both. And I think
Mhm.
it's the stuff that can be listened to and heard by yourself and thought about, but also can be experienced with others. And that's one of the things that I think people, and especially after this fucking quarantine, man, like
Yeah.
I was just talking to a friend about how, you know, music brings people together. Like when I come up to Minneapolis, like, yeah, I know that there's going to be some people who are going to be meeting there, and they're only meeting there and they're excited to meet some of their friends and stuff.
Mhm.
And just to come see a show, and I'm just the reason for people to be there. Like it's not
Yeah.
necessarily like, oh, this is like,
No, don't lie. You want to come visit me? That's what you're going there to visit the people.
oh,
That
dude, I'm gonna be spending plenty of
yeah.
time in Minneapolis over this next year.
Good
Once I
man.
get my van, man, Tru-
Yep.
trust me. But yeah, it's a really big question, and I think the role of the artist is to be able to inspire more life and stuff, and life is just the human existence. We are life, so they're
Yeah.
one and the same. It's just different ways of. I don't know. It all depends on you can look at one from one perspective and see the other, and then you can look at the other, you know, you can take the other perspective and look at over there. So, but I think life is what, like we're talking about all of humans stealing things, right?
Yeah. Stealing
Picasso's
from nature.
Picasso. So you could think about stealing. So Picasso said, good artists copy, great artists
Yeah.
steal." And so
Oh, okay. Yeah.
like when you're an artist, like you can hear everyone's gone to an open, maybe, well, no, not everyone goes to open mics, but maybe you have a friend who likes to who's a musician and really likes expressing themselves, but it's clear that they don't have their quote unquote own voice, right? It's clear that they're mimicking, like you're talking about. They're copying someone, and
Mhm.
they're copying someone, and they're not able to come up with they're not able to like uh they're trying to sing how they expect other people will want to hear them. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
they're trying to please the people by changing the way that their voice might be. And sometimes you can hear that struggle in the people's singing. And I mean, I've experienced it.
Mhm.
I've experienced it personally, you know, like my own like learning of singing. So I try to like copy like the singers that move me to do it. And like, I don't know, it's a really tough thing to find your vocal identity, or like that's an ongoing struggle.
Yeah, and that's the whole art of it all, man. And that's the beauty. I think of, does life inspire art or does art inspire life? I think of two different scenarios where that would actually work. Like if you think of Guernica, the Picasso painting of the bombing of Guernica.
I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, it's like I think it's like the city Guernica. I think that's how you pronounce it. Either way, there was a bombing there, right? And the painting is depicting the aftermath of this bombing. So that is very much life influencing art, right? But then I think of stuff that like Vincent van Gogh has created, where his creative art was a mutation of the human creativity. And that art, I know personally, has inspired my life. And that's like the other way around, where art is inspiring life.
But
I don't know.
I could argue and say that Van Gogh is like his art was inspired by the reality of his time
of
too.
His life, yeah.
And well, not just his life, but his styles represent the movement in philosophy and the movement of human like our evolution of our own consciousness, right? Like that you can look through history, and you can find in philosophy and in art and all these things like complete parallels in even in science now too. Like the way that people are viewing reality is dependent on our best theories of reality. Like, so like, for example, when we think about relativity, like everyone kind of knows the concept of relativity to a degree. Like we all know like, oh, everything's relative, man. Or like people have relationships, like time is relative, meaning like it depends on your relationship with other with objects relate to each other, and their frames of reference and stuff, and everyone has a perspective, man. And so those concepts of like light, the space-time fabric and all that shit, like that seeps into our consciousness and shapes the way that philosophy and things are. Like now everyone's talking about the quantum superpositions and getting to the point where it's like all of duality is being threatened, and like and because it's like, oh, it's not, it is and it isn't, but in a way it's just a different perspective is all I'm saying. And so like Van Gogh, and I know and I'm not an art history guy like by any means, but this is just the way that I've interpreted it, is like when you look, the art directly reflects the zeitgeist, like, and that's why I'm really curious, like as an artist myself of releasing music, like I'm more curious about the legacy of like anthropologically of like what would an anthropologist or like an art history person like listen to my music or see the music and see it progress over time, and like what does that say about the cultures as it's been moving, and my interpretation. It's like a meta, it's like and I try not to think too hard about that, because I feel like, I don't know, at this point I try to just be like, just keep creating, but that's part of the evolution though. That's part of the evolution of the consciousness. Is like now I'm becoming aware of my own creating and my own and it's trippy, but it's like that's part of the whole process of like coming in. If it's interesting because we talk a lot about this.
Are those the Clark church bells?
Yeah.
Clark
6:00.
Oh, I miss those, man.
Yeah, you can hear them.
Man, I used to sit on my porch and listen to those bad boys.
Yeah, they're nice.
If I close my eyes, I'm almost there.
I'd say it's a beautiful day, but it's not.
Oh, you guys got poor weather there?
For the past 3 days, man, it's been cloudy and rainy.
We just turned the corner, man. We're looking at nothing but
nice
sunshine and
there,
happiness here.
Yeah. What do you think about what do you think about the kind of the collapse of the institutions that we have now, and like how we can salvage stuff, and like
Yeah.
what it seems so hopeless a lot of times when you look at like how everything
I know.
is, all the institutions and the framework of these institutions, of the stuff that has kind of carried us through these, through civilization and our modern way of life and stuff. And I know it's been really shitty before, and maybe we're just really maybe we're really spoiled.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
it feels
That's
like
a hot take.
what can replace these like I that's why I think I've been thinking about this, like Game of Thrones. It's always talking about the
Uh-huh.
old gods and the new gods and stuff. And I think that's something that's really attractive to a lot of people now. I think why so many people loved it and started to really get, because they can resonate, right? And we're talking about the artist reflecting the reality. Like Game of Thrones is one of those things that at the right place at the right time, these things take over the cultural zeitgeist because they resonate. So an artist's real job is to just reflect the reality. Like, and
Reflect the
that's
life.
that's what I try to do, is I just reflect what's inside me, but I'm just
Mhm.
I'm just one of a greater thing. So like what I reflect, or what I speak out is just it's something from within me. And so
Mhm.
I just kind of tap into that human nature of things, and people can look at me and my music, and they can resonate with that, just in a way of like a storyteller can tell that story, and people can see themselves in it, and all that. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Because
Yeah.
we talk about Norse mythology, and talking about Druidism, and talking about mythology, and like the more I read Jung, and the more I'm reading about archetypal psychology, the more I'm reading, like I'm like, maybe I should just start worshiping these gods. Not of course
Mhm.
this can be different than like I'm not on my knees being like, Zeus please, and like, or like sacrificing
Right.
animals, like or something, like not yet.
Yeah.
but
So
but like, do you think that's a viable solution? Like, would that even
yeah.
help? Like, is that better
Yeah.
for people to be
Yeah.
aware of these
I think tolerance is important, and you
tolerance?
know, also I just want to add too, like when I hear a thundercloud, when I hear the thunder clap, I feel great, and I can call that Thor, blessing the day, and I can interpret it how I want.
Right.
And if I'm doing something that in my unconscious is not good, like I'm being a potato, like sitting on the couch, and I could be out weeding my garden, and then like the thunder claps. It could be like, hey, there's your signal, man, get outside. Or
Yeah.
I could already be outside, right? And I can be naturally happy from the dirt under my fingernails and eating clean and doing exercise and getting fresh air and feel really good. And I can hear that thunder clap, and I can personally understand that that is Thor giving me an agricultural blessing. But as far as the collapse of institutions, and very specifically that we have been the United States of America with a capital C for Christianity, I don't think it's necessarily these institutions that are collapsing. I think it's the social norms in which people don't know what social norms are anymore.
Yeah.
With the rapid increase of technology, the topic of abortion and whether people are pro-life or pro-choice, and uh, that is a very large social norm on where you give agency. The female body, it is female's choice, right? And the fetus is in the female's body, and therefore the woman's right. And some people say that the fetus is actually a life, and therefore human rights outweighs a woman's rights. I am very much a pro-choice person in that the woman's body in Egypt, the baby was a part of the woman's body until the umbilical cord was severed, and that's a social norm. That's why the Hebrews weren't allowed to give birth without the Egyptian midwives, because the Egyptian midwives would terminate the baby, the Hebrew baby boy. That's why Moses was
Huh.
the Hebrew midwives were very strong women, and like they were able to like produce these Hebrew babies in quiet, in the hush hush, because Egypt didn't allow the Hebrew children. They didn't want, there was overpopulation. But because Moses had already been severed from the umbilical cord, his mother had to put him in a basket and push him down the Nile, because the Nile River was viewed as a god, and that if the Hebrew baby boy were to be pulled out of the river and taken in for adoption, that's because the Nile River granted it. Or if the baby had succumbed to the elements, then it was exposed to the elements, and that was because the Nile River wanted it. And Moses was sat down in a basket as a chubby little baby boy, and the Pharaoh's daughter was like, "What a cute baby boy," and picked him up, and that was the Nile River granting him a life. And so I think with the mix of gods and institutions, gender rights, human rights, religious freedoms, economical freedoms that you're talking about today, and people wanting to go get a motherfucking haircut, and that right to do that, and we have all these issues, and we're spending more time telling people that they're wrong and spending less time listening to each other. Yeah. And I don't think there's going to be any way that we could possibly create a sliding scale of rights, right? A sliding scale of social norms. I open the door for every person I can. If I'm walking into an establishment and there's someone's behind me, I hold the door open for them. If somebody feels like I'm threatening their like masculinity, or if somebody feels like I'm using an arbitrary, an old school chivalrous term that's almost demeaning to them, and they maybe yell at me for grabbing the door for them, or something, right? Like a social norm mix up, and it causes chaos, man. And quite frankly, I don't think there is a repair to it. I don't think there is ever going to be a sliding scale that we will create. I think it's going to take, who knows, man. All I know is there are points in our communities where what you are doing in life and what you're supposed to be doing in life is black and white. You do it this way or you do it that way. Or you have instances in communities where it's all frivolous, man. It's all colorful. Ancient Greek art. You look at the Mycenaeans, which I believe were the people inland, and the Minoans were the people on the islands, or the other way around. Pretty sure the Mycenaeans were inland. Their artwork is so different because the people in mainland Greece had walls, they had not the Spartans, they never believed in walls, they just believed in good infantry. But you had them building up fortifications and armies because, there's wars going on and there's doors and they're protecting themselves. Whereas you go to the people who are on the islands, you hardly find any doors or walls. You find maybe, pillars and structures and places to keep things dry, and their art resembles it. The mainland Greek people, all their art, the people are standing in like militant attention. And you look at the pottery from the people on the islands, and there's just swirling octopuses all over them, showing this like loose form feeling, expression. And there was a collision then, and the mainland Greece people built up their navy, and they smoked the people on the islands. And it's just like you see instances in life where people can live very liberally and have a whole lot of tolerance for each other. And I'm going to go ahead and say it too, that I think liberal people and tolerant people need to be tolerant and liberal for those outside of their bubble as well. I think that listening to people is very important, especially when they disagree with you, and kind of understanding where their social norms come from. It's a big misunderstanding.
Yeah, dude, I totally agree. I think that's one of the hardest things for people to do right now. Like, I think that more than anything, that's what scares me the most, is how people are not able to. And I think when it comes to like in person, like real human contact, it's never usually that big a deal. But when and people are able to agree on most things, but people are so supercharged to be triggered, like supercharged, supercharged to be triggered by politicians and policy names, just like words and stuff. Like I'll say I'll say to someone Donald Trump, and it'll just be like they'll go nuts, and they
give me your first response when you hear the word Donald Trump.
Right, their adrenaline starts pumping, and they have all these ideas of what that means, and all these things, and then and vice versa. You say like AOC or something, and then persons they'll start freaking out, and they get. And when I have conversations, I've noticed I like tend to not even just like don't even bring up politicians, just talk about the principles. And when I talk about like the actual principles, I'll talk to so many people, and I'll try to like find out what they, we're in Wisconsin, well, you're in Minnesota, but you were in Wisconsin for so long, and I don't know if you're independent. If you be an independent in Minneapolis, or do you have to? You don't have to sign up. You don't have to vote as a party, right? I don't think so. I don't think so. Well, Minneapolis is one of the it's like really the stronghold of progressive ideology in all of America.
Yeah. Which was a total boner when Biden won Minnesota. I was like, what? I moved here to be a part of something other than this. I was so bamboozled when that happened. I was let down by Minnesota. I moved to Minnesota and I was let down. By the way, though, while we're talking about Wisconsin, I miss Milwaukee so much, dude. I love it here in the Twin Cities. I really do. Yeah. But, dude, there's so much that I miss about Milwaukee. And everybody watching that's in Milwaukee, huge shout out to you. And bless up to you.
Milwaukee is a special place.
But it is. It really is.
I don't know. I talk to people. I have a lot of family that are conservatives, and and a lot of friends and family that were liberals too. And it's really so divided. And there are a lot of people in that meeting that are much more in between now. And like, I feel like maybe I would like to think our generation is, this acceleration of information has changed. And actually the statistics show, for whatever that's worth, like all the Gallup polls and stuff show that the millennial and younger generations are, the ideology is completely different than it's not even demographics anymore. It's like age, or sorry, like it's not even like ethnic or class things. Like age is the number one predictor of certain, because it's so extreme of how things shift drastically by a generation. And I think that people in our generation are more, because we're the most diverse generation. We have the most access to information, and we have a really kind of a failed state, almost like borderline. Like the people who are gatekeeping stuff it's getting, the quality of these people are getting worse and worse and worse, and they're all in their 80s now and shit. It's like, what is that? What is going on? Like, this is how are the 80-year-old? How are the 80-year-olds? But I don't know. Nothing against the 80-year-olds, but
as far as it goes with elders, man, I very much respect elders.
Right, and that should be a thing. Like, we should be respecting them, but it feels like there's no connection, right? Like,
exactly. That's the difficult thing, is that
they're not blessing us, so why should we bless them?
Yeah, it's kind of like, especially, to bring up like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, right? That's clearly an age.
Yeah, they're pretty similar in age, right? By 2 years or something.
No, I'm saying they're the people that are voting for them.
Oh yeah.
Their populations, the age is drastically different. Joe Biden's got everybody over the age of 65.
Yeah, pretty much everyone. Yeah.
And Bernie's got a whole lot of people under the age of that, and
but they don't vote.
And I listen to my elders all the time, man. I give my elders so much authority, and you have to understand the difference between authority and power. Authority is my ability to look at an elder and say, you've been on earth much longer than I have, and I respect everything that you've learned.
Sure.
Power is them creating laws to govern the way I'm going to be living in my future. So if someone's going to be creating laws and having an actual like Newton's force over my future and my development, I want to make sure the people that are doing that also have my authority, because power without that respect, or power without that, like, okay, I trust you, that's tyranny, right? And that's why we have all of our checks and balances in America. And I respect all of my elders, and I do give them a lot of authority. I just want them to realize, though, that they have control over my future. And when they're disrespectful enough to throw out any plea that I personally might have about the environment or I might have about like the development of the public school down the street from my house, and how someday I'll have kids that will go to that school and why the funding needs to be better there and so forth. When there's a complete disregard of that, it gets frustrating. And that's definitely the disconnect between our generation and the generation 2 generations ahead of us. I think that they could do a world better if they thought about us. The Greek proverb, good things come when men plant trees they know they'll never feel the shade of.
Yeah. And that's what it feels like now. It's just fueled by short-term reactionary thought.
Popularity. Yeah. It's fueled by like your own like, I think this is what's necessary. If you disagree with it, you're evil. Politics, as far as institution collapse, like the start of this, topic, politics is filling the void of religion. Yeah. Karl Marx said that religion is opiate for the masses. Yeah. And I think our political system has taken that place. I think that when someone hears Donald Trump and they're triggered and they say, fuck this, fuck that, and they get so mad, they say Satan, they're applying a sacred evil. And even though they're saying all these like negative things and they're damning him, it's very similar to someone damning a witch. And that makes you feel good because you're elevating yourself by damning another, or vice versa. People can look at Bernie Sanders, and I'm a very firm believer. I was very much backing Bernie's platform, not because of Bernie, but because of his platform, right? Bernie was the compromise. I wasn't a Bernie bro. Bernie was my compromise. I'll vote for Bernie. There you go. And now, but what did Bernie do for me? Bernie gave me the ability to shout out from the top of a roof, Medicare for all, heal everybody. Everybody should have healing. Everybody should not, nobody should have to walk around with a broken hand for 2 years. And I think that
that's it though.
That's it. Yeah. And that's the opiate for the masses, because after shouting it out at the top of the buildings, I was able to go home and sleep well that night. But guess what? When I woke up in the morning with 10 notifications of other people ranting that Bernie's a demon, I have to put on my robe and be an acolyte now and defend it. Yeah. And it gives me something to do, and I pray to it. And but in the end, it does nothing. It does absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the people they look at you and they go, "Are you done now? Okay, now we're gonna actually do it." Now
it's my turn. Yeah.
Okay. You're done with your little hissy fit. Your little.
Did you get it out? Yeah. My turn. Now let me get it out. Yeah. Now let me tell you why you're wrong.
Yeah. It seems problematic, and I think I totally agree. Like the politicians and the politics, it's good in a way. Like Bernie was a sign of he was like kind of these are the religious ideas, and there are some vastly tangible nature to politics, and that's why. And there's always been a religious aspect, just in terms of party politics, especially when it's this they're pitting the cosmic duality against and pinning the other as evil and us as good. Like we're the good team, they're the bad team. Otherizing your neighbor, the neighbor, and being like they're not humans. Any person who votes for someone that I don't agree is a murderer. They hate humanity.
They're a murderer because they're either murdering babies through abortion or they're murdering people by going to get a haircut during a pandemic. Everybody's a murderer.
Yeah, or bombing innocent people in the Middle East, or assassinating, torturing Americans, war heroes or whatever. But it's a. So how do you is it ever get broken? Do you ever break through that? Is this just like a thing that, like you say, respect your elders, and it's like, okay, well the elders are in charge, and so like. Maybe we do we have to like bite our tongue and wait, or like what are we waiting for, or what because the terms of like reform and revolution and shit, like I have always been singing songs about revolution since I could remember, and it was like just loving it. And I think there's something about it, not everyone feels that need for a revolution, but it feels like that, like there are all these unprecedented quote unquote things that are happening, and I don't know what it all turns into, but ultimately that's why I look I try to look towards the people with the solutions. And yeah, Bernie Sanders wasn't perfect. He was obviously not the fighter that kind of needed to be, like, you know, like Trump, the Trumpian like punch. Like you punch me, I punch back every time, no matter what. Even if I'm wrong, I still will punch back. And even if I'm blatantly lying, I'll still punch back. And it signals every single time to the people that I'm gonna fight for you. You're on our. I got your back. I got your back, because I'm always fighting. People are like, yeah, we need someone who's just gonna fight. And whereas Bernie kind of just took it every single time. It was like a martyr, right? It was just like I've been a martyr my whole life. You know, like every day
I've been telling the same thing every day for 70 years.
I've been telling everyone about the Medicare for all.
And dude, and that's actually what I've found
useful.
as my indicator to start a conversation with somebody that I disagree with. If I disagree with somebody and we are having a debate and they are like changing their mind throughout the debate, then you start to feel like you're talking to someone who's not really sound in their ways, and they're just picking the team because that's who dad picked.
Right.
Or they're just not really yet sound in their beliefs. But I love it when I meet someone with the opposite political view as mine, and they've felt that way and they believe that way. They know it. They haven't changed from it, because then I can have a conversation with them. And I feel like it's a mutual.
Or at least they know the logical, like at least they know like the reason, they've thought it through and they believe it.
Not offended. And people usually aren't offended if I say, "Could you explain it to me as if I were two?" You know, like how, like if you were trying to tell
it's like
you to a child,
okay, you're gonna say, it's a challenge. It's like, and I always ask questions, and that's what I was getting to, like about being politically independent, and why, you know, I think it's 40% of Americans are politically independent now because they recognize this like this weird two-party bullshit, and I've always loved that same thing. Yeah. Learning word persons, because you can learn from everyone, and there's rich traditions all around, like constantly. And people, you know, and there's also really scary traditions and shit, but you need to know that even more. I would argue, like you should, if you want to be a good protector, if you want to be a good steward of your beliefs and stuff, and really know and really believe them and really you have to challenge them, and you have to be understanding the limits and the failures and the potential
the failures,
like the potential the things, because then you can actually truly believe in it, and you know that you actually will fucking die for that shit, because you know, and you don't have to have a blind allegiance, you know, and you can have some deeper like belief and you know, a rich thought of it. But you know, I talk to people on all sides, and I always it's interesting because the way that I approach conversations is usually just like from their perspective, like, and I'll continue on the conversation. I won't make any like claims or anything. I just go, oh wow, yeah, like, and just keep asking more questions. Like just like hearing it, even if someone says, "Oh, I read on the news today that you know, Nancy Pelosi said this and doing this because of this," and I'm not gonna be like, "Oh yeah, where'd you hear that? Fox News." You know, right. It'll be like, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, what does that mean?" And they'll say like,
help you understand.
They'll be like, okay, so and I'll just keep asking questions, and then you get to a point where they're like, "Oh, okay." They build some trust, and their defenses are down where they're not like war against the other. And so they can actually be in a mind space to actually explore their own echo chamber. And so like the way that I try to do it is at least like, just simply just like nudge them around and try to expose at least the fact that there are more sides to the story, or that there are other opinions. And I'll be like, "Oh, you know what? I heard someone saying something about the other day, they're talking about that. What were they saying? They're saying something like," and then posit my thought, like of what I think it is. But say like, "Oh, I heard on some news thing," you know, or like, you know, just saying a different opinion, see how they react to it. And when their defenses aren't up, and it's not this huge, like, like I got to defend my God. You know, like it's you can actually explore the theology of it, you
So
know, and yeah.
I wanted to tie that back into my career and like in fundraising and sales, and really quickly say too that I'm always looking to help out people who have a mission in nonprofit work that I can get behind. I'm always here to help. So feel free to, you know, if you guys are watching the stream, find me on Facebook through this or whatever it might be. Get a hold of me, and I'd be happy to help out. It's what I like to do, and in the career, a lot of it is listening to people. When you
Yeah, I can vouch
are,
for it. I can vouch for it. Logan helped me with my last fundraiser, which was a very big success. So
it was awesome, man. And it's fun too. When it's first stuff when you've got a mission you
yeah,
care about, it's fun to build it. And so one of the biggest things is listening to people, especially, you know, working with a nonprofit farm, and you've got someone who wants to give you a couple $1,000s to donate, and you don't want to go into that meeting and say, with our farm, I'm doing A, B, C, D, E. You want to say, what do you value? You know,
right.
it's like, what do you value? And then now let's build together. And
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly,
it's gonna be the same thing when I'm talking to
Some fucking
people
basic
who
empathy.
disagree with me entirely. Like and then you find out if they're pigeonholing you. Like, I'm a liberal. I'm very much a liberal person. When it comes to firearms, I'm a bit more conservative, but people won't know that right away. They might pigeonhole me for being just this like bleeding
Right.
heart liberal,
You're
and that's
pro-choice,
fine.
so you obviously probably want to ban all guns.
And this is my face when I'm talking to someone who's like, "Oh, Bernie supporters," or what did I see? The meme that was like, if you run out of food during the pandemic, you go to a house with the Bernie sign because you know they don't have guns. And then it was like a picture of Bernie going like that, and it was like, fuck around and find out, you know? It's just like people, like when I'm talking to people about political views or religious beliefs,
it's not as cut and dry like that.
And they say, well, Logan, you're an atheist. And I go, okay, well, that's pretty quick to assume, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I prefer secular, but it's always good to listen to people, because you're going to either figure out that they're arguing with you because they don't know the real you. So you change the type, say, oh, well, let's talk about how I agree with you, you know?
Yeah, they just turn you into a straw man.
Yeah, or they're going to start telling you things that you already agree with. And you're going to say, you're yelling at the choir, man. And or they're going to say things that are so outlandish, you reply with a question is just, you know, can you help me understand? I found that those words in neurolinguistic programming, asking someone, can you help me understand? We're all raised, we all want to help each other, especially, you know, for the most part. I hope we all want to help each other. But just asking someone, can you help me understand your belief, is the best work you can do. It's just asking for help.
Yeah, because I find that's a great fucking point, because it's that, and that's essentially what I'm trying to think of, like boiling it down, like what I got to do what you got to do to try to actually have a reasonable conversation. It's like you said, what do you believe? Like, show me your beliefs, and then we can build from that, right? As opposed to like, tell me your beliefs and let me find all the contrast and where we disagree, right? Like, oh,
tell me your beliefs, and then tell me what I believe in, and then tell me why I'm wrong, and then I'm going to do the same thing for you, right. And then we're going to be so far opposite, but on the same team.
Because I talk to liberals and conservatives alike, and most people agree with all the problems. We all agree with the same problems, right? That everything's fucked. You know, or at least
I think we all agree it's all fucked.
If it's not all fucked, it's on its way to being all fucked. And if it's it's at least some to mostly fucked now, if not already totally fucked. But the everyone agrees with that stuff, and at least for the most part, not everyone, of course, but the majority of folks, at least I think there is a consensus in that. And a lot of people, they disagree on the solutions, but when you start going for, like, I think Medicare for All is a really interesting concept, because these ideas of liberal and conservative things they don't actually hold, like, the labels don't really mean anything, because it's proof when you look at Obamacare, because Obamacare was a right-wing, quote unquote right-wing, but right-wing from the 80s. It was like a Republican from the 80s, like the Cato Institute, or no, it wasn't, or the Heritage Foundation, one of the two. It was like a think tank. They brought up it as a market solution for healthcare, right? And Newt Gingrich was one of the big proponents of healthcare exchanges and individual mandates and stuff. And he was promoting this whole thing. Mitt Romney, famously implemented it as a governor, like as a big reform for healthcare. And it was, he had some success with that, at least implementing it. And maybe, I don't know if it's ended up fully functioning, but it was a good, like, a little prototype of, at least he was doing something, which nowadays that's like unprecedented, a governor actually doing something. But the at least in Wisconsin, but we got a lot of issues here. But I'm not trying to throw shade on any politicians, but I am though. But so the point of what I'm trying to make is Obama has been slandered as with the old. I mean, of course, in politics, every politician gets slandered and shit. But the idea of it's unjustly slandered as a liberal idea, like Obamacare, when in reality it's like, wait, what? This is founded in like the conservative tradition, and the idea of Medicare for all and stuff, and like Social Security, like these could actually be considered conservative ideas. Like these are from the 60s and 50s, and like even Teddy Roosevelt, and people have been fighting for these like these things for forever. And it just shows you, like, through the generations, the labels start to ebb and flow, and things are changing, and the parties change, and all these labels for things are always in flux. So it's like, I wonder how much of this stuff even matters. And everyone's just so focused on these labels and what they mean. It's like, all I'd like to see is like this agreement to become the unit, like that bubbling up of like, okay, now we know this is true because this is the only solution. That's what I was feeling. Medicare for all is starting to go into that idea of like more than 50% of Republicans in some polls have favorable view of Medicare for all. So like that's huge fucking like that's so different. And the vast majority of likely Democratic voters are hugely in favor of it, as opposed to like 20 years ago. So, Bernie is a politician in this crazy system that's totally corrupt. Yeah. And yeah, maybe he was just that guy to just tell those stories that he's been telling since the beginning, and no one's been listening. And finally he can tell the stories and, kind of just like have at least a shot to say them in front of everyone. Meanwhile, while our entire generation is listening, hoping, being like, where are the solutions? Like, we have them. None of our politicians are saying any of the solutions, but yet there are all these solutions. And, that's what I look to the people that have consistently advocated for solutions. Awareness is great. Awareness is great. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's important for awareness, but if you don't fight for that implementation of actual solutions,
the politician that's fighting for everybody, not just the left wing, not just the right wing. They're fighting for all citizens of their
generations. For like the 3 generations from now. No politician is ever thinking about that nowadays. No, never.
Yeah,
it's like you said, that with the tree planting a tree that
he'll never feel the shade.
He'll never feel the shade. Yeah.
And I loved that I was able to be a part of Bernie's campaign, and I'm very thankful that Bernie has been given the platform that he's been given, because I met plenty of like former Republican and conservative.
So did you do canvassing?
People. Phone banking.
You did phone banking.
Yeah, I did canvassing for PBS during the day, so I was cashed on knocking doors for a while. And so I met a lot of good people, also like at work, like people who I thought were super conservative or Republican, preaching something about Bernie. And I was like, wow, I totally had them pigeonholed. And I find that they are very conservative, and they do have conservative beliefs, but like they see a lot of the work that Bernie has done.
They're like, he's telling the truth.
For unions, for workers, for everybody, man. And it was really great that I could feel comfortable then fully leaving the Democratic Party behind. Like, I felt very comfortable being like, sweet, if I can say sayonara to the Democrats and they can say sayonara to the Republicans, I think that has established something outside the two-party system.
100%. And
It's just unfortunate though that the most dangerous place to be is the middle of the road, right? You got to pick a side because you don't want to be right in the middle, right? It's the most dangerous place to be.
but the middle,
Um,
who's to say what the middle is? Like, and that's the thing is like
yeah,
things have been shifting. Like, have you heard of the Overton window? So like
no,
it's the window of the spectrum of political ideology of like what's feasible in the culture, and the Overton window is like what society deems as acceptable, right?
mm,
Like acceptable, like reasonable conversation, and so like that's what the importance of these third parties are, to shift the Overton windows, to like
mm,
change the concepts that are chatted about in the two-party system. Like we need them probably more than ever, because nowadays there's very it's all just a it's all just a farce almost at this point. Like the Democrats come up with something, they already know beforehand whether it's going to pass or not. Almost every single time they know if something's going to be good. They know what they know, they're making calculations all the way. Like for example, this next CARES bill that's coming through, there were a bunch of
yeah.
people that were like, we need UBI and we need student loan reform and we need this and we need this, because these are the only bills. These are probably the only 3 bills that'll be passed this year. No, I don't know. Like, like
Yeah,
that's just how they do it now. They just pack a shit ton of things into one. And every single time they water it down before it even goes to the Republicans, knowing that it's going to be struck down every
and you
single
want to do
time.
something and you're not a Democrat or Republican, you're not going to get the rubber stamp
Yeah,
for
you're
it.
not. You're
That's
not
where
even going to even get a seat at the table. You're not even going to be
it's
let.
dangerous
Yeah.
in the middle ground because the institutions of the DNC and the Republican Party are just like so well set
Yeah.
that Bernie was essentially starting a war on two fronts, man.
Yeah.
Like he was getting stuff thrown at him for being a socialist from the Republicans, and then he was like, I don't know what the Democratic's problem was with Bernie Sanders. I don't know what the DNC had against it. And like
You know.
I dude, yeah, he wanted to usurp the power. The fact that the dude ran as a Democrat to first take off the left wing of the bird and then attack the right wing of the bird, I think it was the only strategy he had to play.
It
You
was really
know?
all he could do. I mean, and that's the thing is like, yeah, he wasn't. I don't. He was in the. I was been telling people that the way I look at it is he's carrying the torch, but he never carried the sword, or he had the sword sheathed the whole time. Like
Yeah.
he never used the sword. He never tried it.
Nope.
He was always just illuminating, always just like, here's what I'm just, no matter, you smear me. Okay. I'm not going to even really fight back. I'm just going to say what I need to say. And like, let that speak for itself. And then everyone just be like, what the fuck? They're smearing Bernie, and Bernie be like, and Bernie doesn't even care. He's not even thinking about that. He's just like old and grumpy and doesn't it just wants this. He's just like, I just need to say these things. Everyone and I think he was really shocked too, to a degree. I think everyone was shocked with how much success that had. Like the largest campaign in my entire lifetime, that's for damn sure. And the largest grassroots campaign. That's why it was so shocking how it all got.
It was a multi-racial, multi-generational.
Yeah.
It was everything, man. Every single person was a part of the political revolution.
And that's why it's very it was very disheartening the way that he exited the race, and you got to wonder what concessions, because he's got like a task force, which is just laughable. It's not a task force. Okay, great. There's no weight to what. So I wonder, like, what did he concede anything? Like, what? How did he get, or did he get any concessions rather? Did he get anything? Like, what is gonna? He drops out and they still say fuck you every single time. Like, what?
Maybe,
That's what he did last time, right? They cheated him. It was so obvious. They ask him, "Hey, so what about them cheating you, huh?" And he goes, "Oh, we're not gonna go there." It's like, what do you mean we're not gonna go there? They cheated you because he's still got to run again.
His concession was that he saved us. I bet the powers there threatened to just nuke the whole world. And Bernie was like, fine, I'll drop out. They're like, we'll do it, man. If you do that. And he's like, fine. He saved us, man, by dropping out.
I don't
no,
know.
that's my lie. Man. No, that was my on the spot lie. Who knows, man? It's just so sad. And we've got
I don't think he has that much power.
we've got a whole lot to do from here on out, though.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I mean about like the solutions, right? Like
Yeah.
the solutions. Oh shit, we got Alpha 420 King and Twitch nukes. What's up,
Nukes.
Alpha 420
Yeah.
King? Leo McCullah. What's your kitty's name? What's your kitty's name, Logan?
Oh, her name's Alexa. She
Alexa.
goes by TT because there's two T's in Kitty. So she's 20. She was coming up here for her 15 minutes of fame.
TT.
Yep. There'll never be another cat like her. She was the runt of a litter, and she has outlived all of them.
So when you went canvassing, which is going door to door
for one entire year full time.
NPR, you just all day every day just sorry PBS
television.
And so you went with PBS door to door. Did you
every day?
How often did you get hostile folks, or was it never usually hostile?
Never hostile. We're in Minnesota.
Yeah.
You know, I can, and that's
they're like, say sorry to you for opening the door.
Oh, sorry. Really dark topics, and like the institutions are collapsing, and we're all fucked because it's become the Tower of Babylon, right?
Right. Like I said, I think maybe we're just spoiled too.
Right. Exactly. And so I would knock some doors, and I would say, "Hi, my name's Logan. I'm with Twin Cities PBS," right? And we're not. My company is not like a part of PBS. We're like contracted, and so like there'd be people who right away are just like, we do not support PBS whatsoever, and they would maybe like toss a slander, and they'd be like, but do you need to use our restroom? You know, because it'd be like pouring rain or something. Like, do you want to step inside quick? Or people, it had happened a couple times where people were like, oh, well, yeah, well, hey, just come inside, man. And I'll come inside. They'd put me by the fire, you know, the proverbial fire, warm me up, hand me some tea, and then say, we don't support PBS whatsoever, but it's cold out there. You know, why don't you take 5 minutes to warm up? So that was always great.
That's awesome.
It was always, I think my favorite thing that happened to me was this gentleman who was very liberal. So, yeah, right? A liberal yelling about PBS. And he was going off about nationalist propaganda. And he's like, do you know the last time the U.S. has seen this type of nationalist propaganda? And this dude's half my size, tiny little hippie dude with like a canoeing T-shirt. He's very stoned, and he's just triggered, right? And he's like, you know, the last time the U.S. has seen this type of nationalist propaganda? And I was like, I don't know. And the Patriots won the Super Bowl. And he's like, the fucking Nazis. So I say, fuck you. And I looked at him, and I was like, fuck me? And he's like, well, not you. And that's when he got, you know, because like, I'm towering over this man. He's like, the Nazis. So fuck you. And I was like, whoa. Fuck me? And he's like, no, like, I was like, you plural formal, cool, see you, man. And I like walked away, right? But
yeah,
people do get triggered, and the worst, that was probably the worst I had had.
That's not so bad.
Right? Yeah. My favorite story though is a man who had a sticker in his window that said like, trespassers will be shot, survivors will be shot again.
Yeah, I've seen those signs before.
Yeah. So I'm thinking this guy's like super conservative, probably hates PBS because that was like typical to have like some conservative people like hate on us, threatening to shoot me. I was like, you know what? Pretty sure I got a couple friends with the same sticker. It's a joke. Yeah, I'm not gonna be butthurt about it. And you never know. My idea was that I was gonna knock every door that I could and start the conversation. The good word of Elmo. And the dude comes out of the house pretty ratty. And I says, I'm Logan with PBS. You familiar? Like Channel 2 is PBS shit. And he goes, I got 3 kids. It was missing fingers.
Wow.
I got 3 kids that watch PBS every goddamn day. And I was like, hey, let's do $10 a month for each kid. He's like, you bet. And ended up he's doing $30. You know what I mean? Like totally opposite of how I thought the conversation was. It was the warmest guy I'd ever met. You know, and that's there are so many stories that you get from when you get a chance to go door to door. If you find a cause that you admire and you have the ability to go door to door for it, take that opportunity, because you get to meet so many different people and you learn so many things about human nature. And maybe that's why I'm able to have constructive conversations with people I disagree with.
Because you
right?
face the cold approach of like
Yeah.
of the cold approach of standing up for something, or at least like having a framework of something that you have to back, and you have to believe, and you have to communicate and even convince them to either jump on board if they're already on board, or maybe if they're on the fence, like try and get them off the fence and onto your side. Yeah.
Someone's like, hell no, I hate PBS. I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks for coming out to say hi. Bye.
You'll be like,
I'm not. Why would you ever want to change someone's mind?
Hate PBS?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That people. I think it's a really sacred thing, PBS, in a way of like, in the concept of as a maybe more philosophically about just like having a public access to thing. Maybe it's different. Maybe it feels a little different now with the internet. Maybe, but like during the time and when it was when TV was the only way, it feels a lot to me like a public library in a way of like just like the commons, right? Like just having just the concept of the commons, and that's something that like I think a lot of people, and you as a studier of a student of history and stuff, like understand a lot of, I think, the confusions that people have and the disagreements people have is just the lack of awareness of our own history and like the historical precedent of a lot of things. Like some of the more mind-blowing like eureka moments I've had about our society, or like things that just start to click and neurons that connect of like, oh shit, that means this and that means this because of this. A lot of those connections happen because I have a historical context or some sort of precedental context of how these ideas were formed and where and in what and how they've continued to evolve over time. And so like so much of the fundamentals of the zeitgeist of America has been with the internet information. There's so much in like these institutions are collapsing. There's so much new information everywhere that it's hard to know like the historical context of things, because everything's kind of like and postmodernism and this like post-constructionist idea of just like kind of like nothing matters anymore, and it's all we're in this idea of it's just a dumb universe, and we all when you're born you die, and that's it, and this dumb universe with no meaning. And I think like you combine those two, and it's really a recipe, and maybe people need that to like deal with it right now, like to try to understand how to process all this new information. We kind of just need this
everybody get together and make audible fart noises with their mouth. We need to have a day on Earth where everybody just gets together and goes really loud. The whole world.
Yeah, it's like a meditation, fart meditation. I have a YouTube video.
Today we all audibly fart noise.
I have a YouTube video called the longest fart noise ever, world record. You watched it?
I watched it.
Yeah, I can beat. I think I can beat it. I need to do another one. I've done more vocal training and more like breath. I have more breath techniques and training now. So like I think I can beat it. I don't think it's the world record, but the world records are like insane. Like there are people, and it's just a special technique that they have where it's just you're barely getting any air out. Like you maximize the amount of noise you can get from the smallest amount of air flow. And I think all the world record people, they use a part of their mouth or a part of their nose, or they sing in a way where it takes like almost nothing to do it. And then you just have to consistently put a small little amount of pressure of your diaphragm and just slowly release a steady amount, like just slowly.
You learn something every day. And I didn't know today would be the day that I grow my talent in audible fart noises, but this is it.
Yeah,
I wasn't ready for it.
It needs to be really wet too. Like I would drink water to help. Like I would drink water, and I would end up going like you just have the tongue out. Well, at least that's how I discovered it. Was like the best way was just like have it out already, and then just slowly blow out. Like really, really softly. Because if you were like, you're gonna be done. So like, but you have to find just the right amount of force,
balance
that can keep the fluttering going of your. It's kind of like playing your tongue as a reed. You know, like I don't know what I think it was 34 seconds or something. Yeah, it's the video has become. And that's why I want to do it again, because it's actually kind of taken off as it's got more views than like my music videos that I like artfully craft and like try to like have all these layers of meaning and intention and real like deep soul searching of like what is the symbolism and all these things and try and you know, execute these narratives and stuff. But
there's just life inspiring art.
There was a great comment on one of that. It was like, this artist also makes really beautiful music, and that makes me feel really happy, like that I could that I could do both, and that's why I need to beat my record and do it again, because I might as well. I wanted to do a thing of just like noises, just like me trying to make noises for just hold the notes longer and just have silly videos like that. I don't see, you know.
It's fun, man. It's a childish thing.
It's playful.
Yeah, I want to make noises with your mouth. And dude, I do that with my fingers, man. I like finger drum every chance I get.
Yeah, finger drums are great. I would do that all the time. It's like in class and stuff, just constantly especially
when you use all of them, all 4 of them for different patterns, and you're just going crazy. Yeah.
That was my go-to.
Something about drumming too, like that feels really good to me. Like if you ever hear a really good drum circle, or just like a really good banging drum.
Oh yeah, dude.
That moves me, man. It's almost like I cry. You know, it's like when I hear a bagpipe and it brings tears to my eyes. You know, it's just something that's genetically coded to me. I think that feels so good. If you guys are just tuning in and you like the sound of bagpipes and you're also emotional, go ahead, smash that subscribe button. If you're a bagpipe,
yeah, dude. Anyone who's a fan of the pipes, hit that like button. That subscribe. That's the Cullah Cast all about. We're all about spreading the awareness of bagpipes, finding real world solutions. real solutions. We're not just trying to spread awareness of bagpipes. We're trying to implement how everyone can appreciate bagpipes and real world solutions. Bagpipes for all.
There was I believe I'm remembering the story correctly. There was a Scottish captain on D-Day storming the beaches of Normandy, and he didn't have to be a part of the charge, but he was, and he, as in hundreds of years of their infantry, he was accompanied by 2 bagpipers, like storming the beaches with 2 dudes just wanging on some bagpipes, and tradition versus survival. You know what I mean? Like the dudes playing the bagpipes, like that is such a like. What do you like? You can call that stupid because you have to be realistic. It's a battle, and you're running in with the bagpipe.
But the bagpipe is fucking like. That's what they would use it in battle. Like if you have a bagpipe and you got a bunch of bagpipes, dude, that shit is intense. Like there's so much tension and so much, like imagine never hearing that stuff, or like, it's like they have a god with them, right? Like they have some supernatural thing. Like that's what the drums were for too, right? And like the war chants and all these things is just to like, we're channeling this like intense shit, and like you're on the other side and you don't even have a drummer, and you just like, and you know, you like kind of on the fence about fighting for the Lord that you're with, and you're like this guy, and then the other people come with bagpipes, and you're just like, fuck. Those people,
swords as long as they are, you know.
Yeah, and you're like, these people mean business. They got bagpipes, and that shit travels miles and stuff like on
Yeah.
the, like those things would be used to communicate and fucking terrify motherfuckers.
We had an
man.
ultimate frisbee tournament in Chicago back in college, and it was one of our sponsors for it was Sirius XM Radio or whatever, and they had a bunch of there was one field that had a bunch of speakers set up, and they were blasting dubstep, and I swear I used to listen to a lot more of it, in like 2010 when Dr. P was really big and that, and I had never run that hard, I felt, in my life.
Dubstep's
Then when you're
insane,
like sprinting for a piece of plastic, womp, 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 and it was right in your ear, it was very inspiring. It was audio stimulation.
Yeah, dude, that shit's crazy. Hey, thanks to DJ K Train and Ray Camp for subscribing on Twitch. I think they heard your plea for the bagpipes. And
Heck yeah.
We got some conversions, man. Some bagpipers. Oh, did you guys come here for the bagpipe talk, or did someone tell you that these guys are talking about bagpipes and send you a link?
Come for the conscious enlightenment, stay for the bagpipes.
I agree, man. When I was a kid in like high school and Google Video and shit even before YouTube, I would just search bagpipe like processions and stuff, and I would get shivers down my spine, and I'd just be like, whoa. And I think you're right. There is something maybe it's coded into our DNA. Like I wonder how much of the of ethnicity, like how much culture is inherent in the is carried through. Like I was talking earlier about the idea of language, like the idea of language being formed at this early time of humans trying to just abstract these things and try to communicate them, and then over time it ripples into these after the Tower of Babel, right, when humans come to this point where we're is that where babbling comes from?
Yeah, so the Tower of Babel was they were building a tower to God, and people from all over, I think, were coming to it.
And God was like, "Don't do this. This is bullshit. You're not ready for it." Yeah.
Bad idea. Because everybody came together and they were babbling because there was so God's.
There was a universal language though already, right? Like people were speaking in a universal language.
Yeah. But it was people spreading out too far and getting different languages and different beliefs that created all the Babel. That's Babylon, that's like, Babylon's like the evil empire.
Oh yeah.
I'm always for it, man. I think the offbeat, that it just gets me through everyday life, man. I'll turn on some Max Romeo.
Ooh. Dude, someone just recommended me this Detroit reggae from the 70s or 80s. It's some good stuff. It's recents. I gotta look at my recents. Macka Fat. Ever heard of Macka Fat?
I haven't.
Macka space fat. PFAT. Macka Fat.
Nice. You said Detroit?
Yeah. So
it's got some motor.
It feels a little Motown-y, but it's pretty true to like the reggae. Yeah, like at least out of Jamaica, it feels more like
Got some roots.
Yeah, it's definitely roots because I don't know. I love listening to. There's this collection of music from all of Scratch Lee Perry, like in the Upsetters. If you know Scratch Lee Perry, everyone might know that song. I'm gonna send him to outer space.
Yeah,
find another place.
Satan is an evil ass man.
There you get a lot of insight talking about art reflecting the culture. There's a lot of moments where there's like these spoken words where a guy will talk about be like, hey, like make a voice of like a woman or someone in the culture, and they're like having an argument, and it's like this real like journalistic type of like thing where they're just speaking what the fuck's going on, talking about the oppression of their people, talking about the politics, and the woman's yelling about this and the man's response. It's like really interesting. It's the Upsetters. There's a compilation.
What is your number, boy? No, I really don't answer. What is your number?
54.
46 BMW. And a lot of good reggae music and roots reggae has been sampled so many times, dude. Like One Spliff a Day, right? Billy Boyo, One Spliff a Day, keep the evil away. That's been sampled in a lot of rap music that I've heard.
I've sampled reggae music in my song Bob Marmalade.
Bob Marmalade.
It's a sample from Sun is Shining. I think just the beginning goes boom, chinky, chinky, boom, chinky, chinky, and I just like slowed it down and like glitched it, and then made some and then the song 50 or 26 or 50 on I don't know. There's one on Pack of Clones that's just a straight up like reggae song that I just put a beat to, and like added some shit to it, but. Yeah, man, that I grew up with my mom blasting fucking Bob Marley Legend, and like
right on.
Yeah, and just hear like and Bobby McFerrin's shit, dude, like that stuff, the One Love stuff, like listening when I discovered African Herbsman, like the album, the Bob Marley and the Wailers, or I don't even think it was the Wailers at the point. It was just like it's the old school like Scratchy Perry like roots shit of like. Oh man, dude! Some of the mixing and like the orchestration and instrumentation of some of this old reggae stuff is just so beautiful. It's so like I don't know. I'm so about it, man. I'm so about it. That's one of my go-to like Sunday afternoon, like or like sunny afternoon. Fucking put on the Upsetters, put on African Herbsman, and just like if you have a big tree or a small axe, you want to cut it down.
Like, yeah, and if you have a rooster, you must have a hen. And dude, I use reggae music a lot when I have anxiety, right? Yeah. Like in times where I start to feel really anxious, I do like to put on reggae music, and I've got certain ones, like Barrington Levy is great. I like a lot of his music. There's been a couple cases where like reggae stars have like done too much cocaine and like molested people, so it's kind of hard. Like Ika Mouse he's first reggae artist I listened to was ganja smuggling because he went bang bang bada bang bang, just like making these noises, and we were just talking about that, like how like playful it is to make these like noises with our mouths, and he had constructed music around it, and I loved it, but. Down the road in his career, he did some pretty nasty things that landed him in prison and other places. So that's where it got difficult for me to continue. And then I found Barrington Levy, and he's a wholesome dude. I'm a big fan of his music. He's got a song Black Roses, and I love it, dude. It's like he's saying like I don't see no black roses in nobody else's garden. Like to care and keep it, you gotta water it. Like black roses. Like it's just cool. Like he's got something special to himself, and he knows that to keep and care it, he's got to water it. Like he's got to make sure he's taking care, and he doesn't see it in other people's gardens, and he wants to make sure that he's I love it. It's just a good message.
The black rose symbolism that's a really curious one for me, because I know that there's an old Irish folk song called Black Rose, I believe. Yeah, it's one of those classic fucking fiction symbol, one of those real rich symbols, Black Rose. Yeah. I haven't explored that symbol as much, but
I will. I'm gonna explore it when we're done.
Yeah. Speaking of exploring, I'm ready to play some D&D tomorrow, man. It's my first time playing.
Yeah, it's my first time DMing, so I'm pretty excited.
Yes, I'm pumped to see how that goes. I like the character that we got, and I hope it's gonna be fun. I'm sure be lots of good news.
Tomorrow is gonna be day one. It's just gonna be a 1-day campaign. It's if people tuning in are familiar with D&D, it's gonna be a meat grinder. It's just gonna be like all of our level 1 characters getting together and just having a meat grinding party where we're just gonna murder monsters and level up, and then we'll start a larger campaign after that.
Yeah.
One that might take a couple more days, but I think it would just be a good way because a lot of our players are new. It's gonna be my first time DMing. It's gonna be our opportunity to to test out our spells, test out our great axes. You got a mace, right?
Mace, yeah.
Dude, and he's a beef.
And a longbow.
Your character is just a piece of beef, dude. Just a tough piece of metal and beef.
It's a Artie, right? Artie the Wood Elf.
Artemalama or whatever.
Artemayama, yeah, the
Artemayama.
Artapachasama, Hadapumasama.
Hadapumasama, fucking cleric dancing in the background, going crazy.
Call me Bada Boom the Wood Elf.
Call me Bada Boom.
Bing bong, Bada Boom. Yeah, that should be fun. Well, believe it or not, we've been talking for about 2 hours and 13 minutes at this point.
Yep. It's been, dude, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Yeah, we always have good, lively conversations and get to some roots, get to the roots of some real interesting concepts that I always really enjoy.
Yeah. You got to bring a lot of it to Stone Soup when I was working with Stone Soup and Ion Lion. Big shout out to him. I wanted to make sure I got a couple shout outs in before we concluded.
Absolutely, man.
Big shout out to Ion Lion, for getting me into the game, and then you got to come on and bless us with music. You know, the Dukes of Fratney came on.
Yeah.
I wish I had some music, but I hope our conversation was good. So thanks
absolutely.
Thanks for everybody who tuned in.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone on the chat and stuff too, and everyone who listens to this afterwards on Spotify or on Apple or on Anchor or whatever it is that you listen to. Really, I put those out there, and it's this whole ColorCast thing has been interesting. Honestly, it's really just me like wanting to explore like ideas and talk to my friends, and it's a way to kind of like get on the record about certain things and really explore and have opportunities to fail out in the open with like conversation. Yeah. Because I feel like that, I don't know, conversation is an art form in itself too, and being a curator of conversation and understanding the ebbs and flows of it. And there's only so much you can do with physical limitation, but this honestly, chatting through this teleconferencing is almost simpler for me to set up. It's really simple to just set it up. Yeah. But I like the in-person more. It's much more intimate. But yeah, thanks again for coming on, man. And I appreciate the conversation. And
safe. Maybe we'll have a rehash conversation down the road. Maybe 8 months or something like that, and we can talk about the collapsed institution and if we've made any ground on our.
See if it's still collapsing.
If we've conceptually engineered a way to get us out of this mess, this calamity.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows, man? But in the meanwhile, we'll keep on keeping on and keep doing the things we're doing. A lot to be hopeful for. Appreciate it, man. All right, I'm gonna cut back to the intro song, and then I'll say goodbye to you. All right, bye everybody.
See you guys.